Today, Rinpoche completed the section entitled Showing How the Only Entrance into the Mahayana is the Spirit of Enlightenment. We went over the 18 categories that showed how this entrance is like a seed, and then also completed the 5 categories that show how based on that important it is.
Lari de Lawa de Chibi Chungun Di Chibusum Marbe, Chungun Di the Chujubi, Chibusum Chibas, Chu, that Chibi Chimika Ledro, Chibi Chimitala, and the Tijin Jogo Sanjikuna Temba, Sanji and the Shubal Lobby, and Sanji Bitu, Sanji and the Shubal Lobby Sonje, that one but Tijin Jogo Sanjikuna Temba de la Jaji Sajini de Marbe, Tojin Jogo Sabian Susu Temba. Tambaje niba dilambeba tuen chawas sajini ta tambo tejin jogu ta sabyon su temba da juji imba juji ta peji tsasa no marba
Juji tsar.
Juji no ta ya.
So once again, we're looking at Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment. And specifically the section called Training the Mind in the Stage of the Path for Beings of Great Capacity. So when we look at Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, we find the quote that states, "Understand that there are persons of 3 capacities, small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to define their characteristics or identify their characteristics." So what was being referred to here were the stages of the path for beings of small capacity, the stages of the path for beings of medium capacity, and the stage of the path for beings of great capacity. So we've already completed the sections in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment that deal with the small and medium capacity. So now we're currently in the section on training the mind in the stage of the path for beings of great capacity. So that section, when we look at the outline of it, is broken down into 3 categories. The first category is showing that developing the spirit of enlightenment or developing bodhicitta is the only entrance into the Mahayana, the only door into the Mahayana. The second category is how to develop that spirit of enlightenment, how to develop bodhicitta. And then the third category is how to learn the bodhisattva deeds after developing bodhicitta. It's really, what does one do? Once a bodhisattva arises, once one has bodhicitta, what does he or she do from there and to engage? So that's the third category. So when we go back to that first category, showing that developing the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance into the Mahayana, Jayan Sheba's outline breaks it down into 2 major headings. The first major heading is that showing that developing the spirit of enlightenment, or bodhicitta, which is the only entrance to the Mahayana, is like a seed. So this is the first category. And then the second category is, based on that premise, how important it is. So those are the 2 categories. So the first category, which is bodhicitta, the only entrance into the Mahayana, is like a seed, Jayan Sheba states has 18 categories. We've already gone through those 18 categories. Lobsang.
Ta Tijin Jogo Sanji Kuna Tembasarwa, ta Teba Chibi Sanji Tijin Solang Brijulu Yuare, Yulang, Tonglang, Gulang, Mululang, Naga Yula, Tijin Sanji Yuares.
Lessa.
What the Tijin Sanji Samalo Tijin Jogo is, Tijin Sanji not Tijin Jogo in Chagas. Jusen Garesana, and then what the Tijin Tolang, Yulang, Tonglang, Gulang, Mululang, Biju, Galo, Teba Chimbi Yunten is. Teba Chimbi Yunten, Yemi Jusen Garesana, Tijin Sanji Simba Yizang, and then Teba Chimbi Yunten and the waters. Tijin Sanji, Teba Chimbi Yunten, you will go Yizang, Tijin Jugos. What the Marva? Yeah.
So when we look at this first category, that the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance to the Mahayana, and we compare it to those 5 paths of the Mahayana, the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning. We see that there are bodhicittas, or spirit of awakenings at all of those 5 pathways, at all of those levels. So each of those 5 pathways have the mind that aspires to enlightenment, or the spirit of awakening. So we can say that the only entrance into all of those Mahayana practices is the spirit of awakening. So the entrance into the path of accumulation, the path of preparation, the path of seeing, the path of meditation, and the path of no more learning, we can say, are all only entered by the spirit of awakening. And that is because all of the excellent qualities that one achieves on all of the 5 paths, the excellent qualities of the path of accumulation, excellent qualities of the path of preparation, path of seeing, path of meditation, and path of no more learning, are all excellent qualities of the Mahayana. So therefore, because they are all excellent qualities of the Mahayana, they are necessarily entered into by bodhicitta, because the only entrance into the Mahayana is bodhicitta. So we can say that all of those excellent qualities that are found on all of those 5 paths are entered into by the spirit of awakening. And it's logically proven by the fact that they are excellent qualities of the Mahayana, and the Mahayana's only entrance is bodhicitta. So this is the way of proof, the entrance showing that this is that bodhicitta is the only entrance to the Mahayana throughout all of the pathways. So it's by way of proof. Less so. Less so.
Example.
Less so.
But then I Shanchu sent the Tibetan Chambi Sabun.
Okay.
Tell it then, and the Sanji
Less so. So when we look at this point, that the only entrance, the spirit of awakening, which is the only entrance to the Mahayana, is like a seed, we go back to that heading. The point that's made here is that if we have a rice seed, then we get a rice sprout. If we have this bodhicitta, or the mind that aspires to enlightenment, it allows for the arisal of all of the excellent qualities of the Mahayana. So it's like a seed. When we plant a rice seed, we get a rice sprout. When we have this bodhicitta seed, it sprouts all of the excellent qualities of the Mahayana, and it sprouts the Mahayana, literally. It sprouts the Mahayana. So that's how we compare it to a seed.
What teaching you to seven Saji Juji in Bar. Juji non Tapiji that Jungan the Mayaja Jundona. Junga to what the Larin Champichina, Shugu, Neja, Jachu Chadu, Ulia, Tin, Somba Chitel Dua, the Tony to be said. What and my Junga to the name Udua?
Then the Juji, Junga?
Juji non Tachunga the Mayaja.
Okay, so. It seems as though when we look at those 18 categories, we've gone through them. But Rinpoche said, let's go to number 15 and just do 15 through 18, just so we do the ending part of those 18 categories. So just give me a moment to find out exactly in the text where that is categorically. So the Peik, Nija, Jeju,
Jeju
Jadru, 86. Yeah, Ragian, just that's cool. Don't need to be sure. Then Senche the Papa Danjar, that's cool.
대들 돈이 두비 싫어장 제발 준비 라 투모 많이 봐 문제 나와서
Tony Dopi Shera.
내가 그저 인상
John Tepa Chempi. Okay. Therefore, Tepa Chempi Lan Tumo Mahimba. Then the Techen Dan Teme Geshe Du.
저는 맞는 가서 그래. 다들 어디 그 안것 대사는 가서 된 대시정으로. 대들 돈이 두비 싫어장 제발 준비 라 투모 많이 봐 문제 나 텔레비전 라나 담면지 저거스 대시에 사주지 생담비 티두존에 네
Okay, Rasa.
Okay.
All right, so we are on page 18, the last sentence on the bottom. Thus he says that you differentiate these vehicles not by philosophical view but by deeds. If in this way even the wisdom that knows emptiness is not specifically a Mahayana path, it goes without saying there are other paths shared as well. So that's where number 15 is. Then Junga Kabar Kagadu. Okay, then go Gutso Yabu.
Junga tenen odele.
Detash.
원래 다 좀 어떤 가도 만들잖아. 대대로 돈이 두비 싫어잖아. 세바 준비랑 투모 많이 봐 말이스.
Lesso.
투모 많이 봐 먼저 나스. 안에 델리젠비에 걸론 대신 투모 많이 나가네 용거리 말이스.
Lesso.
제고스. 주선 디셔 샤주지 생담비 태도 존에스 샤주 생 조진 공구레스.
Lesso.
담비 태도 존에 중화 매진 중화 매진 샤주선 담비테도 조진의 공부만 봐지 중국장라는 샤주선 대지전 어떤 추두스제바이나 어떤 시다가 너바 처음에 말했어 중국장시 전바시네 란지 차시 담으라 내대도 매배바네 주지 신도 중앙 셀로스 어떻게 중앙 받으려도와
셀로 주제바
제발 준비
오케이
돈이 두비 제발 준비 라토모 많이 만주나스
티체
안나 티진 손어줘라 도수줄라 돈이 두비 싫어도 샤주 세면 뭐로 돈이 두비 싫어 티제 토모 많이 라마레스 샤주 세디자고레스 티제
Okay, so number 15 makes the point that the entrance into the Mahayana is not the perfection of wisdom, because we find that is not something that is uncommon, because we have the wisdom realizing emptiness in the other vehicles as well. So number 15 shows how the entrance to the Mahayana, once again, is bodhicitta, the spirit of awakening. It is not the wisdom realizing emptiness. So this is number 15. It reads, thus he says that you differentiate these vehicles not by philosophical view, but by deeds. If in this way even that the wisdom that knows emptiness is not a specifically Mahayana path, it goes without saying that there are shared paths as well. Hence it is clear indication that you have very little familiarity with the teachings when after you have taken the spirit of enlightenment to be the crucial instruction, you do not practice it, but after recalling it at the beginning of a session only in words, you intently make a great effort at some single small portion of the path. So number 15 is showing how there are these spirit of awakenings and also these wisdoms realizing emptiness at all of the 5 paths there are. And just as a translator's note, not direct perception, wisdom realizing emptiness necessarily, because at path of accumulation and preparation there is not direct perception. But there are these wisdoms that understand emptiness at all of the 5 paths, and there are bodhicittas at all of the 5 paths. So what it's saying here is that even though we find those at all, both of those at all of the 5 paths, the bodhicitta is the uncommon practice that is the cause of the Mahayana, that makes it specifically makes it a Mahayana practice. It qualifies it as Mahayana. So that's number 15. Diksum.
다 주루바 되는 마트 쓰고도 자지고 주루바 된데 되는 도서 되지. 주루바 다시 뭐야 다시지 용신 생지다 따와 개초와서 제단 대바 준비에 뭔거레스 대나네 안에 타도 싫어니도 개초버레스 개초에 임바데 되는 되는 도서 주루바 되는 마
That's Shipu.
제르 버제발라 파마니샤 구바 따르스 제단 버제발라 파도 많이 구로바 파도 마다바다 파마니 구바 니샤 구바 따르 란차 상와 타던 싫어지 수 상와 구신 란차 상와라 타던 싫어게 차시 용수도 상와지고 그래 구신 제바도 타지도 샤주지 센단스 다타드네 맞도 요소니 말고 맞도들어데 니지 전부도 좀 맞도록다 두도 상주 생자고레스 제바도 타지도 상주지 센단 싫어지 두도 돈이도 싫어레스 타지도 상주 센단 사지고 못도발 타지도 상주 생고 그래
맞아.
네 싫어지도 돈이도 싫어도 그래서 돈이도 싫어면은 네 대지 본도 말아봐 대매도 싫어면은 대진 너 말아봐 대진 빠져도 집 본도 말아봐 또 손대자래 싫어지도 돈이도 싫어 또 바구라스 what about 주루바드레스다
Kabarka? 네.
굴라서 또 굴라 what about 래 대즈마도 무도
So then number 16 shows how both the common and uncommon pathways are needed in order to achieve Buddhahood. So one needs method and wisdom in order to achieve Buddhahood. So this is what number 16 points out. In general, just as both father and mother are needed to have a child, you need the entire complement of method and wisdom to have a complete path. In particular, you need the main method, the spirit of enlightenment, and the main wisdom, the knowledge of emptiness. That's it. Ngay Sampa. The Chik Gonjana, the Kaba, the Judun, Kaba Guts. Ngay Sampa, the Mambo Yomare. Okay, yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Diksum.
다 주루바도 왔더래도 주루바도 터주도 샤주고 생당 싫어주도 돈이도 싫어니도 그래서 대니도 맨날 사지도 말아봤다 어떻게 다 주니발로 왔더 대대도 야지베 르르다 줄더나 따와 마노 그바네스 단 녀모바도 시지데버를 zanle 뭐야근 되바 여바 이나야 네 따와 마노 그래서 그거부터 되는 마땅한 도스다. 게데르왈레 마고나 코알레 조아 짠 냐나네 셴나달 하통 또 셴넬라 하통도 맞춰와 셴네 다메바 동반이지 동고나 왔다바들에 주든들에도와 게르르레르왈레 마고나 코알레 조아 짠도 냐나네스 냐나네 셴넬라 하통도 맞춰가지고 그래서 셴넬라 하통이도 돼 준데 너무 셴네 두고래 되네 하통 용고로다 셴넬라 하통도 맞춰가지고 그래서 셴넬라 하통도 맞춰와 셴네 네 다음에 봐 동반이지 공고나서 왔다 주든다 대용도 있다.
So number 17 is this. If you only meditate on one of them and diligently seek merely to be liberated from cyclic existence, then you have to meditate on the meaning of emptiness, selflessness, without mistaking meditative serenity for insight. So that's number 17. And just to go back to 16, it's saying that one needs both method and wisdom. The reason that the wisdom is necessary, the method is necessary because it's the entrance to the Mahayana, the entrance to all the excellent qualities of the Mahayana. The wisdom, which is the wisdom realizing emptiness, is necessary because it is the grasping at true establishment which binds one to cyclic existence. Therefore, one must abandon that in order to be freed from cyclic existence. And the way to abandon the grasping at true establishment is to realize emptiness, to realize the lack of true establishment. So that's the reason for this union of method and wisdom. And then it speaks of the need for realizing through serenity and insight, selflessness. And one first realizes serenity, and then from serenity, which is also can be translated as calm abiding. One achieves a state of calm abiding, and then from calm abiding, one achieves special insight. And then it becomes a union of the two, where they become concomitants, where they don't disturb one another. And that's what's meant here, where it says, then you meditate on the meaning of emptiness, selflessness, without mistaking meditative serenity for insight. So you're able to differentiate between the calm abiding and special insight, and then allow them to unite. Diksan.
주지바는 세진 냥데 르나스 세진 냥알 데바 토하고 데바 요바이나 다시 주냐네 제우레스 세바 쳔비 타도 셔로 주냐네 냥알 데바 녀트 냥알 데바 요아레 라제 냥알 데바 요아레 세바 쳔비 냥알 데바 세바 손 냥데 손 요로와 세바 쳔비 냥알 데바 타바 두야게 세바 쳔비 타바 두야 데바 요바이나 안에 다시 주냐네 제우레스 어디 땡가 누스다 테바 쳔비 냥알레 데바 테바 쳔비 타바투아 테바 쳔비 타바투아 데바 요바이나 타드 셰로 두냐레 제구레스 그바데 네 주지바데 마데가 두스.
Okay. So then number 18, the Juje Kabaka.
Juje dene래.
The Kana.
테바 쳔보와 케천나네스 테바 쳔보 인슬로바 이나네 샹주지 센라 장고바 인데스 네 샹주지 센로 장제고레스
That's
네 구비 주센 가르스나 자샤망고베 어디 송도스다 시비실라 메네신 신지실라 메네다 셰송바타르 모두진고들요로 시비실라 메네신 신지실라 메네다 시비실라 메네신 송도 돈이도 비셔라 되어봐 이나 네 돈이도 비셔라 이나 돈이도 비셔라 요나 안에 덴질노는 말고 쿠자와 덴질노도 그러와 덴질노나 덴질도 되면요물노도 그래 렐노도 그래 안에 어디 안에 코아폰도 그러다 돈이도 비셔라 되어봐 이나 네 쿠이탈면 해봐 셰토 코아폰도 그래스 네 시비실라 메네신스 돈이도 셔라도 여바이나 네 시탈레 메네바셰도 그레스 시타본도 그레 코아본도 그레스
맞아.
힌지실라 메네탄스 힌지 쳔부도 여바이나 시탈 홍마르스 네 투다존도 라제다존도 타바투사두 네 케바는 텔냐바잔데도 그렇다 힌지 쳔부도 여바이나 와테 시탈 홍마레 힌지 쳔비 시타고 그레스 시비실라 메네신 힌지실라 메네탄스 시비실라 메네바셰그레 시비 쿠이탈 메네바셰그레 힌지 시탈 메네바셰그레 시비실라 메네신 힌지실라 메네탄 셰송바타르 셰라지 쿠이탈 홍안 골라스 돈이도 셰라지 쿠이탈 코알 홍아데 고그레스 카투레스 힌지 쳔부도 여바 이나 힌지시 탈 홍아 네 고그베스 힌지 쳔부도 여바 이나 네 테젠바조 네 셰탈 홍돈 네트던 라제 나신 네 고발 냐바잔 주님을 대고 말와
맞아.
고그베 셰라지 셰와 shiraji shawa tungwa mekibi shirasa. Tuni dubi shiragi shetal nunga kato mares. Tuni dubi shira timen la yore de, timen kuzu shetal nunga res. Shetal goje de, tinji chenpo dugu res. Mekibi shetan. Sibi tamalhuwa, timen la yang yobi shirosa. Sibi talmanhuwa de, timen la yores. Ode tuni dubi shira de, shetal gotu mares. Ane sibi ta malungwa teme la yue zang toni dubi shero tege sheta tu gutu mares sibi ta le malungwa teme la yue shetang shansen je lang je gaja yu zu shi ta tungwa yinbi shiros shansen gang gaja zu de shi ta tungwa tres gobal june bu nyaba ja de to de shansan te ka gu res gobal nyaba ja june bu de ba ina se jeng tuen shi tu ma da wa de shansan je la ji ga ja tu shi ta lu res teng gu ji la de ni shan chu se ni ji tu res wa de ba do da ji ji ba chan ro.
Okay, so then number 18. Nonetheless, if you claim to be a Mahayana practitioner, then you must be practicing the spirit of enlightenment as well. Why? You need wisdom to prevent falling into the extreme of cyclic existence, and you need compassion to prevent falling into the extreme of peace, which nirvana. So wisdom does not prevent you from falling into the extreme of peace, as the Venerable Maitreya says in his Ornament for Clear Knowledge. Through knowledge you do not abide in cyclic existence. Through compassion you do not abide in peace. If you are a Mahayana practitioner, you must practice the spirit of enlightenment, because even in the Hinayana you do not fall into the extreme of cyclic existence, and the main thing to be prevented on the Bodhisattva path is falling into the extreme of peace. There are nirvanas, or liberations, in all of the categories of vehicles. So the hearer's vehicle has nirvana, the solitary realizer vehicle has nirvana, and both of these vehicles are Hinayana vehicles, lesser vehicles. And the Mahayana vehicle, the Bodhisattva vehicle, has a nirvana. So all of these vehicles have nirvana, have their liberation. And the liberation of the Mahayanist is Buddhahood. And the way that one is freed from cyclic existence is by abandoning the root of cyclic existence, and that is the grasping at things as being truly established. By having this misconception, this grasping at things as being inherently existent, the afflictions are created, and then these afflictions cause us to react, engage in action, engage in activity or karma. So from the grasping at true establishment, we have afflictions, and from the afflictions we have karma. And then from this we have cyclic existence. So the root of cyclic existence is really this grasping at true establishment. So the way to get rid of cyclic existence is by abandoning that. But by abandoning the afflictions and this grasping, one is freed from cyclic existence, but not freed from this kind of solitary peace that's somewhat of a trap to a bodhisattva in nirvana. And that's what is meant by not abiding in peace. So the hearers and solitary realizers, because of not having bodhicitta, because of not having this uncommon practice, abide in peace. They go directly to nirvana. But because the bodhisattva practitioner has this method side, has this compassion, has the mind that aspires to enlightenment, it causes him or her not to fall into the extreme of nirvana, because it's impossible then to fulfill the needs of all sentient beings. So it's for that reason that the bodhisattva practitioner, when he or she becomes a Buddha, does not just stay in nirvana. The compassion that they've generated to become a Buddha which then generated this bodhicitta, the desire, the spirit of awakening, the desire to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, this realization forces him or her not to abide in nirvana and to then help all sentient beings, because there is no benefit in abiding in nirvana. So the compassion forces them out of this abiding in peace, this state of nirvana. One as a Mahayana practitioner realizes that a Hinayana practitioner, once he or she achieves liberation, spends an enormous amount of time in nirvana, spends an enormous amount of time in their enlightenment, and that amount of time in no way benefits others. So therefore the Mahayana sees that as a drawback, and then is kept from that tendency to just abide in nirvana by his or her previous realizations of compassion and in the path. Disung Rinpoche. So these are the 18 categories that show why the only entrance to the Mahayana, which is the spirit of enlightenment, is like a seed, and that's number 18. So we're done. So So those are the 18 categories that show that the spirit of enlightenment, which is the only entrance into the Mahayana, is like a seed. Now we get to the second category, which is based on that, based on all of those 18, why it's of great importance. So there are 5 categories, according to Jayan Sheba, that express this importance. So the great importance that one arrives at based on these 18 categories, we find 5 categories. We find the presentation of 5 categories. This will work.
Jayu Gomba Dewala, Sama Jubi, Jesse Nanes, Jayu Gomba Dewala, Jayu Gomba Dangasu, Sanji Kanju da Tenju to Sumarbe, Kanju Tangasu Dual Potu Jatan Kasin Juro, Jayu Gomba Dewala, Sama Juba Dewade, and Shanchu Samba, Shanchu Tena, Jayu Gomba Dewala, Sama Jubi, Jawa Shajaman Budagi, and the Swaji Kayuroka.
The Delpa?
And the Kanju Nasu Pepi Jatan Chusung Rebejiro, Kanju. What then the Kanju Momburo, Tatan Momburo, Kanju Gomba decay to what Sama Juba de Shanchu Samba Radioares.
Ole.
Tena Jayu Gomba Dewala, Sama Jubi, Jesse Nanes, Jayu Gomba Dewala. I know what the Sanji Gumbatin Rebi Pashat Semares, Gomolu, Papa Tomato, what to get Reba to Samasanga Logro, what the ten to go. Jayu Gumba Dewala, Samajubi, Jesse Nanes, Rambuchi, Sandeni, Jula, Jena, did I met to show you, Lanches or she, Yatsaman Zinches, Shanju Samba to Shanju Sand Jul Jesona. And then what they land the Tentacle made to I will just want to and Samanzing Gagres, Samanzing Chase, Shebangu, and then Tamore, Julie Chebasana Tazanto, Mazintes, Neshebangu, and then chuchun tani jebala tani shangchu samba zote tani ki shiragi abri songa mares ta shunju le kundu shunju le dajen jenda rangi tundu yang menjung senjen tunsen ka senje renjen chebande haname meji chongs jenda rapta teme tu jiro jenda rangi tundu yang menjung randon tu yang ten salu to yong mares menjung ane senjen tunsen kan senje renjen chebandes senjen tanji don sanju gu to age toba shawo nyabe ane senje renjen shaju gi senje ma chinde chebande haname be meji chons wade shaju samba zugo de tul de yoares shedan tedan gitun kala yos shaju gi sandan so be goyo mares
That's so.
ane shaju sende ajure tele labi goyo mares
That's so.
gitun kala yo gitun kala yo de shedan
Chobo.
tenda yi shenyen kala yo suna tenda kala yo suna chishu do shaju sende tele labi suna yo mares che dans Kala senji tamba renchen de geba de kola sha che jins shaju senju le geba de sha che jins she son ba dans chu oma so ba le ma ji yin kun shun is chu oma so ba le ma ji yin kun shun is dang so ma oma de ya tu no ma de ngo ma marbe an ka ju ten ju tu ta ji mo je ba yin wa de ane 마지 내고 좋아해서 다주 엄마 소발에 마지 내고 나 사지고 본토 그래서 그지 사지고 아
Then the mar, the semche, dandrar. Semche mar dandrar.
example
The kanjer dan tanger, the mar zugudu, the mar, the semche.
엄마도 어때 두스나 마트 엄마를 마트 그러
That's so.
간주 된줄 따지 뭐 제나 어때 마던 라비 사지고 본 그래서
Semche yo mare.
안데 생지
Sanje semche, kagi. Jepo, semche? The mar dan semche mar dandrar? Sanje kupon.
사지고 모두 마트
Okay,
라비
Mardandra. Okay.
샤주 생도 엄마 라비 엄마
Ale.
샤주 생고 엄마도 수발래 저는 대바침이 내 마던다유 대바침이 내 터도 싫어 그냥 때도 용거를
Lesso.
what the
Ale.
song is that
Ale. The kanjer dan tanger, the uma ragdu. Uma the semche. The
가지고
semche.
도 엄마 라비지 엄마도 주발래 마통 그러다
Lesso.
마통 되어데
Okay. This selbudu.
야
Okay. So when we go now to category number 2, we said there were 5 categories. So this will be the first of the 5 categories. And based on that, the importance or the great meaning, it could also be the great meaning of bodhicitta. Based on those 18, based on that, the great meaning or great importance of this bodhicitta. When the conqueror's children, who validly interpret the commentaries on the conqueror's intended meaning, generate just this precious spirit in their minds, they are amazed and think such a marvelous path has arisen. So once the bodhisattvas, it says, who validly interpret the commentaries on the conqueror's intended meaning. So we have, when we look at the conqueror's intended meaning, the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, in Tibetan we have 100 texts that have been translated, and then we have 213 authentic Indian commentaries that have been translated. So when we look at the root pronouncements of Lord Buddha, we have those 100 texts. And then when we look, validly interpret the commentaries, those can be those commentaries on the pronouncements, which are the Indian treatises, such as the by masters such as Nagarjuna and Lord Maitreya and so forth. So these are the these are the commentaries, and this is saying bodhisattvas who validly interpret. This word valid in the Tibetan is the same word for valid cognition. So this word validly interpret means that correct, There is a correct interpretation of what the Buddha meant and by way of the commentaries. And then it says once you've done that and you know what the meaning is, once you generate this bodhicitta, you'll be amazed because of knowing how important it is based on your reading of the conqueror's pronouncements and the commentaries. It says, so once you know what it means to generate this, when you generate it, you'll be amazed and think such a marvelous path has arisen. However, they do not have the same feeling when they attain a slight quality pleasing to ordinary persons. And then it says, engaging in the bodhisattva deeds says, the altruistic spirit which is not born in others even for their own sake is a special jewel of the mind, bringing an unprecedented wonder. Here, this mind that aspires to enlightenment isn't generated in the Hinayanas. The Hinayanas works for their own sake. But by generating this, it's a special jewel of the mind. It's an unprecedented wonder. And it's saying, well, if someone who works for their own sake, why aren't they trying to get this? Why wouldn't they want this too if they're working for their own sake? Wouldn't they want this unprecedented wonder as well? And then it says, is there any virtue equal to this? Is there any such friend? Is there any such merit? I bow down to the body of anyone who has generated this sacred jewel of the mind. And this is the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And just as a translator's note, this mind that aspires to enlightenment is a result, and it's generated by generating love, and then compassion, and then these other qualities that then result in this larger mind, which is called bodhicitta. So I bow down to the body of anyone who has generated this sacred jewel of the mind. So this is presupposing that all of these other realizations of compassion and love, etc., have happened because they have to have if there's bodhicitta. And then it says, it is the quintessential butter churned from the milk of the sublime teaching. So Rinpoche said that the quintessential butter is Buddhahood. So you could interpret this a number of ways. So the quintessential butter is the actual Buddhahood itself, churned from the milk of the sublime teaching. The bodhicitta is the milk of the sublime teaching that's churned into Buddhahood, because the only entrance to the Mahayana is bodhicitta. And you find that out by looking at the teachings, and this is the milk that you churn from the milk of the sublime teaching. So the milk of the sublime teaching is this bodhicitta. You churn it and you become a Buddha. So you practice the bodhisattva deeds and become a Buddha. So that was what Rinpoche and I were talking about. I asked, is this butter bodhicitta or is the butter Buddhahood? And he said the butter's Buddhahood, and what you get from the teaching is this bodhicitta that churns into Buddhahood. So Rinpoche, the Jutsu Jidandra. So we'll take a short break and have snacks, and we'll be right back. Kanga Lapsa. There's a question? Oh.
You come here?
Can you, Puchen?
Yeah.
Can you please come up? Yeah, is your name Puchen? Puchen, I'm sorry. Come on up. I thought he was saying the new person. Come on up. Now I see. I misunderstood. He said this is auspicious for your thoughts of a new center.
New center. Yeah.
Oh, so new center. I thought he was saying new student. So I was saying, I'm confused. I said, there's two here. Yeah, you definitely don't want to negotiate any terms with my Tibetan language. You wouldn't want any countries to get together. All right. So there are 5 categories that show the based on those things we just learned, the great importance of bodhicitta.
Jayu Gomba Dewala Samajubi Jesse Nanes, Jayu Gomba Dewala Samajubi Jesse Nane, Rambuchi Sendini, Jula Chena, Dida Medu Shoyu, Lanchi so she Yatsamba Zinchis, Shebangu, then Tamure, Julie Jebala Tazanto, Mazinte, Junjule, Jenda Rangiton to Yang, Mujun, and Sejin to Sankan, Senji the Jebande, Hana may be major tunes, she dance, Tatan Gazun, Shanju sent that on Tumbi Gawakalayu, then the Gishin Kalayu. So not in the color J dance, Tella, Kanla Senji, when they show you in but show you, Kanla Senji Tamba, Rinchende, Jebati Kola Shat sessions, Shesomba dance, Tanchu Oma Suba, Le Maji Hingos, Tanchu Oma Suba, Tanchu the Sanji cut, Madame Sanji cut, Tambichu, Oma Sanji cut. Ma tachu oma soken soresna an naleta kebatu sumarbetan so naleta kebantu wote tambi chu oma troken to wote naleta kebatu sores telate na maji yungu an teba chembi yete thod shero yete yungu marbe.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when the conqueror's children who validly interpret the commentaries on the conqueror's intended meeting generate just this precious spirit in their minds, they are amazed and think such a marvelous path has arisen. However, they do not have the same feeling when they attain slight good quality pleasing to ordinary persons. Engaging in the bodhisattva deed says, this altruistic spirit which is not born, and others even for their own sake, is a special jewel of the mind, bringing an unprecedented wonder. And also, is there any virtue equal to this? Is there any such friend? Is there any such merit? And also, I bow down to the body of anyone who has generated this sacred jewel of the mind. And it is the quintessential butter churned from the milk of the sublime teaching. So when we look at the Buddhahood, which one arrives at, it's so who is churning here? So it says it is the quintessential butter churned from the milk of the sublime teachings. The sublime teaching is referring to the pronouncements of Lord Buddha. So those are the sublime teachings. The churners are the Indian commentators, the Nalanda great masters of Nagarjuna and so forth. So they are the churners. And it says from the milk. So Rinpoche said the milk is how one achieves the excellent qualities of the Buddha, which is the quintessential butter, which is Buddhahood. And so he said the milk would be method and wisdom. So you could say the method being the mind that aspires to enlightenment, and then also wisdom, because it takes method and wisdom to become a Buddha. So Rinpoche pointed out that the churners are the Indian commentators, the sublime teaching is the pronouncements of Lord Buddha, and the milk is the method and wisdom that produces the quintessential butter, which is Buddhahood. But Rinpoche also said all the excellent qualities of Mahayana are entered by bodhicitta, but it requires method and wisdom to become a Buddha. Okay.
That tell me Jesse selesmo Jesse in the Shanchu Samba himself. Shanchu Samba the Jesse don't is. Ne Shanchu Samba in the Jesse himself. Jesse in the Shanchu Samba himself. Cassing G laws were Tanda Yanchi Lona Yajang and Undo. Jesse the Jayusil Chaba Yoris. Netu the Raja to so Jayusi in Jesse Mayins. Shanchu Samba my behavior. What the name would do that?
Geshe Jayuse. The NGK that seek Kandre. Geshe conquers child. Jayuse. The Geshe conquers child. NGK. Jayuse.
Jayuse sana. Jawa sana.
Conquer.
Waki we Jayuro. Jayuse. Jayuse Nyatu Raja to Suro. Jayuse.
Yeah. So here we're back to this conqueror's children. So in Tibetan there's a way to say conqueror's children. So conqueror's children, which is jese, literally in Tibetan. I have to use the Tibetan, I'm sorry if you didn't understand where we're going with this, means conqueror's children. We always translated that in English. And that is always referring to a bodhisattva. A conqueror's children is always referring to a bodhisattva. But in Tibetan, there's a way to say Jaitse, which is referring to all of the practitioners, the hearers, the solitary realizers, and the Mahayana practitioners. And that, I'm just not sure how we would translate it into English without it sounding exactly the same. Maybe I think that it would be conqueror's child and conqueror's children, I think would be the only way that it could make sense. A conqueror's child is a bodhisattva's. Conqueror's children are the hearers, solitary realizers, and the bodhisattvas. So that's what I'm going to use as the translation, child and children. So a child of the conqueror, we're going to say, is specifically a bodhisattva. Children of the conqueror can be referring to all of the vehicles, practitioners. So in Tibetan, it's very subtle, and I just don't, it's the same word essentially in English. I don't know how you make it different other than child, children, making it plural, which is probably not the most accurate thing to do, but I've not seen it looked at before, so I don't know. Khensur Rinpoche.
장가가 난 담부 사지. 다 니바들만 자지부터 송도. 니바다와 마야. 네 자주지 생간래 제비 네 라마더니 하지 흐면 레자 진치 나타 내사 어디 다들 니바든 뭐 대땡 두스 자지베 다와 마야 네 다와 마야 자주지 생간래 제비 라마더니 하지 흐면 레자 진치와스 진치 나타스 다와 마야
Ale,
하지를 진치 나타도 왔더니만 땡도 니바드네 대나 바데 아디샤사드레
Yes.
대나 바데 아디샤사데 오데 다도나 데임바레 아디샤 오마 탄주 워로다
Lessa.
아디샤 오마 탄주 워레 다 오마 탄주 타와레
Lessa.
네 조타 마제 난 타야 주드로다
Lessa.
나 라마 셀림바 산존바로 산존바 아디샤게 와디샤 주그 센데 라마 셀림바라 데네 총와레스 총자 라마 셀림바드 라마는 자와시슈스 와레스 문에지나 타와나 아디샤 토레스 네 샤주그 센데 네 셀림바라 데네 총와예자 라마가 나네베 자와시슈도 셀림반쟁 와레스 어때 땡도 송르다.
So then number 2, so I'm going back just for 1 second. I'm looking at those words, and I think another way would be the conqueror's child and then children of the conqueror. I think that the words, the you, we could be children of the. So I think that would be how a child, conqueror's child, children of the conqueror. So conqueror's child, bodhisattva, children of the conqueror, all of those practitioners. But I'm sure you're going to find children of the conqueror, and it means bodhisattva in your reading. So that's the best I can do, and I'm done. So number 2 deals with, thus the spirit of enlightenment is the supreme instruction, extracting the quintessence of the scriptures. Therefore, although the glorious Atisha held the Madhyamaka view, and his teacher Silimpa held the Satya Karavadan view, Atisha attained the spirit of enlightenment by depending on him, and therefore took him to be the kindness of his gurus. If those who know the core of the scriptures look at this part of Atisha's biography, they will gain a great understanding of a key point of the path. So here, Lord Atisha was a holder of the Madhyamika Prasangika view. When we look at tenet systems, there are 4 tenet systems. The Madhyamika tenet system is the highest among tenet systems. The Atisha was a holder of that view, the highest view in the tenet systems. Silimpa, who he sought out to teach him the bodhisattva trainings, to teach him bodhicitta, was a holder of the mind-only school view, the Chittamantran view. So we have, in English, it would be the middle way consequence view is the view that Lord Atisha held. And Silimpa was a holder of the mind-only school view. Now, in terms of viewpoint of emptiness, view, Atisha held a much higher view of the nature of reality than Serlimpa did. But because Serlimpa had this bodhicitta practice to offer him and taught him these instructions, and these instructions, as we're saying, are the entrance into the Mahayana, he saw him as one to be the kindest of his gurus. So here it says, if you look at the points of this story, then you'll get a real great understanding of this key point in the path, and that is that even though Atisha's view was higher, Serlimpa had this to offer him, and this was the kindest thing he was ever taught, even though other teachers had taught him higher views philosophically. This view of bodhicitta was so important and plays such a quintessential role in the development of Buddhahood that Atisha saw him as his kindest guru. Digson Rinpoche.
Tena Paden Atisha, Oman Tanju Tawan Zinjis, Paden Atisha, and then Oman Tanju Tawa non Yashudrota, Zinjin, Selimba, Sansan Nadenji, Tawanziba, Sansan Bella Yena, Nadenba, Nanjubas, Ni Tutama, Shibukan, Sheba Dukin Kanzate, and Sansan Bisenis, Sansan Bella Yena, Nadenba, Nanjuba Nija, Sansan Nadenba Timbereta. Tenas, Paden Atisha, Oman Tanju, Tawanzi, Selimba, Sansan Nadenji, Tawanzians, Shanjuji San Kula Tene, Niebe, Lama Naji, Kudin Chishu, Zimba, Atisha, what the Selimba, the Lama Naji, the Shanju San Kula Tene, Tumba Yinzan, Selimba, Lama Nagan, Kadin Chishu, Zinguares, Zimbi, Nabatabale, Sonroji, Ne Sheba Jigite, Naji, Nella Coachevios. What in the Latin, what the Adisha, what the Selimba Lama Kadin Chishin Zimbadele, Kojichovici ores, Kojichembo Yodosa, Takade Shanchu sent Tachibi must want him better. What about the Rendo?
That's so. Ale, okay. Sensampa and I need.
Sansan but Najubasere.
Ale. The Tomei Dang Dao drop. Okay. So, going back and looking at this point of number 2, it says, therefore, although the glorious Atisha held the Madhyamaka view, so Atisha held the highest view in the tenet system, the Madhyamika Prasangika view, the middle way consequence school view. It says, and his teacher Serlimpa held the Satya Karavadan view. The reason this word is different is that there are two different kinds of mind-only school. There's mind-only school followers of scripture, and then the mind-only school which are followers of reason. So these are the two different schools of the mind-only. Then Serlimpa, the Sensampi Kagi.
Nandenba. No,
the Nandemba, Lungdemba.
Nandenba is Sansoba New, Nandenba Nazuba Zinsere, Sansoba Kanshi, Tanzin Washilla, Chauraba, Tawata Tubanziba, Nandeba Pijimendua. Sansoba Kanshi, Tanzin Washilla, Chauraba, Tawata Maruba, Kelek Nazubas.
Ale, the Longdang Saint Yomare.
Oh, Madam, Nandeba Nazubas.
Gang it's in the Ming Kakare, the Sensampa Enani, then the Dodepa dan Sensampa Drapudu, Dodepa ni dan Sensampa ni Chipa, the Longdang, the Ripa. Longdang, the ni.
What the Lando know that you love Jushana did?
In the June. So anyway, there's two I'm sure I can find it. There's different ways to divide the mind-only school. And here it's saying followers of scripture and followers of reason. Rinpoche is using a different terminology, and he's putting Sir Limpa into the category. Different terminology, so I don't have it. So just know that Sir Limpa is a follower of the mind-only school. There's two different categories of mind-only school, and I know the two. And I'm sorry I don't have the exact word. I just want to use the correct terminology when we get into tenets, and I don't want to just kind of wing it. So I'm sure in this footnote, too, we could find it. I just don't have really time to look that up. So Chitta Mantras, okay. Chitta Mantrans are divided into those who assert that the form of the blue, and this is what Rinpoche just explained this. So I'm going to read all of this because he just explained exactly this. Chitta Mantrans are divided into those who assert that form of the blue in the eye consciousness perceiving blue is real, and those who assert that it is not. Satya Karavardhans are the former. The latter are the Alikaravardhans. See Great Treatise 3. This means the teacher's philosophical view is superior to that of his teacher. So this is how you differentiate between these two views. They don't have the English name of the views. Unfortunately, they only have the Sanskrit ones that we've had anyway. But it explains in the footnotes what this means and how there are these two schools. And here I see this explanation of the blue and so forth also. So I'm sure in the third volume, it's in English. You'll be able to find those words in English, hopefully translated. Just to make sure I got everything Rinpoche said. So the main point here is that Lord Atisha learned the spirit of enlightenment from Sir Limpa and saw him as the kindest teacher, even though his view was higher than his philosophically. And that one should analyze this and think about it and know that that means something important. Digson Rinpoche.
Ta somba tanma tas somba njang jebe wotan de tang du song de. Somba senje yue na sharula sente wa yang ne sanji ji ju la sa. Ne me na tong song de mi chi kan yang manjo wa ne sa. Ne sha ju sente yue ba yin na ne sharul khala tre ba yin na. 네 시우던 뜻을 갈아들여 있나 어떠서 걸로 네 상지 공부도 비전조 그래스 세제도 매나네 아네 세제도 매나네 어때 내서도 왔다 ndlambe Juma Mayimbashi Jeju Shunas, Shanju Sen Kalejone, Shanju Sen Juma Mayimbi Jul Jeju Shumbayina, Shanju Sen Jul Jebayina, Te Simbis, Shanju Sen Simbi, Sharula Sen Yunguji Shimbayan, Jesse Shubal Rodriguez, and Sanjik Simbugune, and the Shatan Shul Kalatea, what the Sukalo Jesse Shubal. Chubitil Dushagares, Tesun Ruiz, Shanchu said the Mena, Tonson and Michi Kante, Netun Michi Kante Xinjiang, and Jesse Shuba, Mututo, so what they get, Somba Tendusun.
So number 3 shows how once the spirit of enlightenment, once bodhicitta has been generated, any act that is done is a bodhisattva deed. So it says, if you generate the spirit in an uncontrived manner after making much effort, you will be imbued with the spirit of enlightenment, and then even giving a tiny morsel of food to a crow will be considered a bodhisattva deed. However, if you lack the spirit, even if you... The Rinpoche Kaba Kagadu...
Kaya watere...
Kama...
Somba Talambene, Juma Mayimbe, Juma Mebashi, Jeju Shona, Te Simbi, Sharula Sen, Yonze, Shimba, Jesse Jushuba, Shesha Yu Tansun Rui, Te Mena, Tonson Rembachi, Kante, Xinjiang, Shanju Sembi, Shuba Matsuto, Sawatepatu, Sombare.
Okay. So it goes one more sentence in. It says, however, if you lack the spirit, even offering a universe of 3 billion world systems filled with jewels will not be considered a bodhisattva deed. So that's number 3. Then
and then Hadraya, Zalungoya, Geshe Shuba Matsuba Nessa, Shanju Semena, and then Jibatin Matan, Shanju Semena, what the content the Legion Dua, Tejin to Tsujine, Shirojibadans, Shindu to Madras supervision, Tsujin Shirojibatan, Lagombatans. Lagomba Dramagoya, Chenrezig Mobioro, Lagomba, Salon Telesugomba, Shanju Sembi Sheba, Monsieur Tosa, Shanju Semena, and Shindu to Galo, Geshe Sheban to Mare, Lagomba, Geshe Sheban to Mare, Salon Telugomba Suyan, Geshe Sheba, Shebi, this Monsieur Tos, what they Jibat the Batan do on that.
Salon Tele, Okay, so then number 4, likewise, actions such as the perfections from ethical discipline through wisdom, as well as meditation on yourself as a deity, and meditation on the channels, winds, drops, etc., will not be considered bodhisattva deeds. So if you do not have the mind that aspires to enlightenment, if bodhicitta is not present, then any action you perform, no matter what it is, whether you're engaging in the 6 perfections, starting with ethics, so we have, it says ethics through wisdom, so ethics, generosity, patience, effort, concentration, and wisdom, as well as meditation on yourself as a deity. So if you're doing deity meditation, deity yoga, or if you're meditating on the channels, I said this is one that the Westerners, we really like. Meditation on the channels, the winds, the drops, etc. If you don't have bodhicitta, this does not become a bodhisattva deed. None of these practices, even though they're stamped as or named as Mahayana practices, you aren't doing Mahayana practices if you don't have bodhicitta. So you're not really doing the practices if you don't have bodhicitta is the final conclusion to that, because it's necessary and it's indispensable. It's qualification of these practices for these practices to work. Okay, Digson Rinpoche.
What that Abbot material Jidenas Zangawat so what die Pejubataras Jidena Zangawat so what die Pejubatara Rinpoche sende Nedu Masonwa Yunjizan Gejula Belushejan and Suashin to Zangawat Rate and Saji Jam Melas send Nedu Shi Sona Regila Mangawa Soadane Nobishete Tenengabe Junzi San Layan Mont Nansibatan Rate Kajirilla Deba Jumatan two deba dala to nushin gawa chungu dang baga sun zeba na jang ja chewa dang ma zeba shebi shede shunju le teba tu chen shindu ma zeba teni zubi shang chu sen me ba gajen gang kase jino ban joro she dans teni tu me jin di chen na keji jigi nga ba Shiba shi Jedang Tatane Jedang Senje na Lene Zang Selunyato Sanaya Senaya Pendu Samba Dante Sona Bame Denjuna Sejeri Madua Patumeba Sendujin Ran Yuden Bamedo Ruban Deba Menchegu Shedansa Kawajan Chushin Jindone Debajine and Seba Joani Shanchu Senji Junshin Shanchu Goa Shanchu Senji Junshin Tabayan Drebin Jimbi Mezi Pewanjo Shesons or Debatule Naba de Ngaba. There's a moment to what Tatana.
Yemedra Kanga.
What about the Nabare? Never said you should Malebatre.
The long Kanga.
Tell this is what I can't tell him to Tanga to Tanga, say you, Marsa. Sanga Grota, Satu Stagrota. Tatrabatla, what is Swat Padan, Nomichin, Tatrabata, Swama Debachi, Swatubichi, Tatraba, what to push an exam marbe. And Swat Nomen, Tat Mamotatu Marota.
Sabudu.
What the Swat Batan Nomichin, the Tarbaina, Lanson Mobotano. Then I Shanchu sent Jules Jesona, and know what they so not they said to Jubutu. And Shanchu sent the manna, Kazikali Jabaina, what so not they say to a Kali Cabres, what turned out to
okay.
Or Tanga example Jadro.
Then they long Kanga logo.
Rather Kalical and Onion de Judge and Mare.
Okay.
Tena Tanga, Swada, Putters, Tanga, the Swada, Putters, Tanga, Tanga Dulo, the Swaden Tanga, Swama, then Tanga, New Gorota, Swama, then Tanga, Nishirad, Natu Maroa, Swaden, Sanga Baina, and the page of Mangaturo. Example. Pujoba Tar Rinpoche Sene to Masonwa. Yunjazan Gajula Belushi Jans, Shanju sent Ned Maswaji, Negwale, Lagwata, Shanju Sengo, the Galikazi Jobaina, Shedak Sachu Humares, Shanju sent Ned Sonsuna, Suata Bandabares, and then Tes Gumba in Lansan, Tulabichi to Yungures, Rambuchi sent Nedo, Maswa, Yunjazan Gajula Belushi Jans. Yun Guadruba Sheba Inaya, Suashin to Tubi Tanga that day. Sajijan Melasa, Swatu no Tubi the Dagana Mamanga to Maro. Shanju Semana, Grisheba Tendabres.
That's out.
Send the net to Swan, net she sonas, Shanju send net from Julia Ina, Regila Mangawa. Suadane, Nobishete, Suad Nobijene, and then Gabe, Jonesy on Layan, Mountain Gansibatan that is, and the Shanju Saint Juliana, so not that she to Jubu Mures, Suad Nobizangabantavres, that day. Kaji Rilla, Dibajon dance, Shanju Saint Juliana, Kaji Rilla, Diba Momotania. So no, she to do ya. Kaji Rela, Deba Shontan, two Duba, Dala to nations, so long as she to Dala to Satu Res, Nation, Goat Chungwatan, Pagasun Zeba Nachan, Ne Goat Chungutan, and the God man, Chuchun Chad to Galo Yapes, Shanchu Sang Diana. And then go Chuchun to the Chibichan, and then go on Zeba to Mazebichan, Cousin Zeba Najan, Jachawatan, Mazeba Shibicheres, Shanju Sang Taji, and the Goa Chuchun to Goa Chimazuya, Goa Man Zeba to the Mazeba, the Awatanagi, Debichibu, you are res, so soon to the Shunjules. Deba Tojen Shindu Mazeba, then Zubi Shanju Semeba, Gajan Gangsijin, and Deba Chibu to Galo, Shanju Semeba, jenda tatu maris.
Bless up.
Deba dojen shindu mazeba, ten zubi shanju seme ba, gajen gangi sejun yaban jodo manjos, jogo mares. Shanju sendu yona, deba dojen tanak res. Shanju semen tatu mares.
Bless up.
She dance, deba jiju kalegale juna.
Bless up. Atomic bomb dan drabodu.
Yeah.
Okay, so the number 5 basically is everything else, all the way to the next category. So if your precious spirit has not been actualized, any commentary Rinpoche gave, I'll give in this, because he read it all once. Actually, I'll do it like that. If your precious spirit has not actualized the key point of the practice, no matter how long you try to cultivate the virtue, you will not accomplish much. It is like cutting grass with a very dull sickle. If your spirit of enlightenment has actualized the key point of the practice, however, it is like cutting the grass and sharpening the sickle. Even when you are not cutting the grass, you will be sharpening the sickle, and when you are set to cutting, you cut a large amount even in a short time. Likewise, with this fully actualized spirit of enlightenment, in each instant you are able to easily clear away obscurations and accumulate the collections of merit and sublime wisdom. Even small virtues become extensive, and those would otherwise be lost after a certain period of time do not end. Engaging in the Bodhisattva deed says, the force of sin is great and extremely intense. Besides the spirit of perfect enlightenment, what virtue can overcome it? Like the fire at the end of an aeon, it will instantly consume grave sins. If even those who think I'll clear away just the headaches of living beings have such a beneficial intention, then they receive immeasurable merit, then what is there to say of one who aspires to clear away the immeasurable unhappiness of each being and to endow each with immeasurable good qualities? All other virtues are like the plantain tree. After bearing fruits, they perish, and this spirit of enlightenment, like a wish-granting tree, always bears fruit and never dies but flourishes. So here, if your precious spirit has not actualized the key point of the practice, no matter how long you try to cultivate virtue, you will not accomplish much. So no matter what, if you engage in deity yoga, you engage in meditation on the channels, winds, and drops, you engage in meditation on the 6 perfections, no matter what you do, if you do not have bodhicitta, then it won't be a very great benefit. It won't be a Mahayana practice. It says it's like cutting grass with a very dull sickle. You're not really getting much done, even though you're doing all of this effort. The grass isn't getting cut. But if you have a very sharp sickle, then it's like it's sharpened even when you're cutting the grass more and more and more. And it says that a very, very small of effort is required to cut a large amount of grass suddenly. So with the mind that aspires to enlightenment, even the smallest virtues that we engage in become very, very great because they're combined with, they are imbued with this mind that aspires to enlightenment, with the spirit of awakening, and therefore they become exacerbated, or they become greater than they were. It says even small virtues become extensive, and those that would otherwise be lost, so some small virtues that misdeeds would just kind of negate or get rid of, aren't lost, and they actually become stronger and don't leave until you're a Buddha. So it's saying that these are these qualities that one has by getting the mind that aspires to enlightenment. It says, in each instant you are able to easily clear away obscurations and accumulate collections of merit and sublime wisdom. So it's saying this bodhicitta, which would be necessarily fall into the category of method, also helps you generate the wisdom. It says it removes obscurations and allows us to accumulate both of those collections needed. In order to achieve Buddhahood, it's necessary to have 2 collections, the collection of exalted wisdom and the collection of method. And the bodhicitta allows for both of those to flourish.
샤자문은 보다 와도 샤주선 주일 제가라면 데뷔하고 녀와를 제거했어. 녀와를 제네. 근데 녀와가 자시 사회관을 다 신다 볼 때는 그 로봇 시비지 강한 용어마다 들으면 현재전 샤주선전 랑상야 할지와 지금 송도도 최소.
Our master teacher, Lord Shakyamuni Buddha, actually generated the mind that aspires to enlightenment in the hell realm when he was witnessing one of his friends having to pull a cart in the hell realm and generated compassion and said, let me take on that task for you and take away your suffering. And at that moment, because he generated this spirit of awakening, was then born into the higher realms. And this is in the previous lives of Lord Buddha, and when he actually generated bodhicitta was in hell. So by having this thought about his friend, and the misdeeds that were left over were immediately removed, and he was immediately died and born into a higher realm.
Like the
fire at the end of an eon, it will instantly consume grave sins.
Satan kangal sinda najin shanju sen ju deba chib kangalo ta nagres sebe she dans ane seje na je lene za selo nyang tu san na ya seje ji ngun na ya ge tele ane khut tra na nya bi hin ji gun ba yin na san na ya pendu san ba ta den des sona ba me den ju na Chenrezig Medowa, Padma Sendujin, Ran, Yuan Bamento, Duban Duba Menjusa, Shetans, Chenrezig Godal, then Hijaba in a Goyoros, Chenrezig Samadunga, the Tanduki, Samba Duena, Sona, the issue to Judge Sabala, Keshaka Maris, Penjugu Shetans,
Tranka Mepa.
Goa Yangun Chushin Tabayans. And Shanju say Mazin go to Galo, Banana Junshin of this, Junshin, and then Rebeji Tasa to Congress. Goa Jangu Chushin Tabayan. Shanju Sanji Goa Jangu Chushin Jin to Ne, Rebejin, Seba Joanis, Kela de la Chitas of Congress, what in the Bres, Shanju Sanji Junshin Tabayan, Rebejin. Meze pyo shanju sen sen go to so rebu gaze me ba yen na ane tele rebu mondo jagres pyo ju she son so to ba nga ba chandre
good job be able to the kushu dan drawed. Okay. So then, like the fire at the end of an eon, it will instantly consume grave sins. So it's like this fire that happens at the end of an eon, and that burns everything away. Likewise, it burns all of the non-virtues away. Even those who think I will clear away just the headaches of living beings have such a beneficial intention that they receive immeasurable merit. So if one, just by thinking, I'd like to clear away the headaches of all sentient beings, receives immeasurable merit. Imagine, it says, then what is there to say of one who aspires to clear away the immeasurable unhappiness of each being and to endow each with unlimited, immeasurable good qualities? So if it's an immeasurable amount of merit just to think, I wish all sentient beings could be freed from a headache. Imagine wishing that they be freed from all types of suffering, from every type of suffering they could ever have. Imagine the merit that one would accumulate by having that thought. And that's what the thought of bodhicitta is, the spirit of awakening, wishing that all sentient beings be free from all sufferings and become a Buddha in order to make that, and one becoming a Buddha in order to make that happen. And then it says, and also, all other virtues are like the plantain tree. So a banana tree produces its fruit and then it perishes. It doesn't continuously yield fruit. It produces its fruit and it perishes. After bearing fruit, they perish. But the spirit of enlightenment, like a wish-granting tree, always bears fruit and never dies but flourishes. So a wish-granting tree is this special magical tree that always gives fruit, always is producing things, whereas a banana tree produces a fruit and perishes. Virtues that are not combined with bodhicitta are like that plantain tree. They produce a good, positive experience of happiness, and then it's gone. Whereas the virtues that are combined with bodhicitta produce Buddhahood. They produce the end result and stay with with you until you achieve complete Buddhahood. Diksum. So that's number 5 of the 5, so that completes that category.
다 제바 쳔비 와데 도만 제발로 사지 송이 바티진 주고 생지 고나 템바 생지 비추 쇼발 하비추 송고 나네 아니 주고 생지 고나 템바 차르다 다 생지 비추가 돌리는 건데 니바 생지 비추라제 생지 비추라제
karma 주유래
오래
karma sum de huan
오래 다 되게다
okay
다 주제 아버님께서 도시
ngay this sum labgo.
Yeah.
So when we go back to the outline of the this section, training the mind in the stage of the path for beings of great capacity, there are 3 categories. The first category is showing how the spirit of enlightenment or the spirit of awakening is the only entrance into the Mahayana. So this is the first category. Second category is how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. And then the third category is how to learn the bodhisattva deeds after developing the spirit of enlightenment. So we've completed the section developing the spirit, showing that developing the spirit of enlightenment is the only entrance into the Mahayana. So that section's done. Now we move on next week to how to develop the spirit of enlightenment. So how does one actually generate this bodhicitta we've spoken about? So we're going to end here, and we'll do the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. And Rinpoche said, thank you. You all listened very well, he said. He said he noticed everyone was listening very well. So concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well, with whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the 3 times. I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. In that pure land surrounded by snowy mountains, you are the source of all benefit and happiness. All-powerful Avalokiteshvara Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. I pray for the long life of the precious Khensur Wandak, upholder of scriptural and realizational doctrines, spiritual friend who trained extensively in the 5 great philosophical texts with exceptional wisdom and perseverance. Suji Rinpoche Gutsi Shapi Dendralang, Atsu Laran Chong Kong Chirlang.